I think Jake Paul is probably going to beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. just because if you're a real boxing fan, you know Chavez, he did win world champion, but there's a difference between being at the top and staying at the top. You know, I feel like Chavez Jr., he's been under so much, you know, controversy his entire life, you know, having that pressure. It's hard to not be messed up and have a lot of pressure on you, make poor decisions, because at the end of the day, like I said, everybody has their eyeballs watching you. But I think Jake's gonna beat him, honestly. It kind of sucks because, like, I know where Jake Paul's brain is at. Like, he's obviously thinking, all right, Silva beat Chavez, I beat Silva, so I can beat Chavez and then say I beat a boxer. You know, that's the goal, to say he beat a world champion, a former world champion. But real ones know, like, this doesn't really prove anything. But at the end of the day, like, much respect to Jake for still beating a former boxer. That's impressive as a YouTuber, right? But I'm not, like, here to say that Jake Paul's ever going to contend for a world title. But nowadays in the sport of boxing, I can't even say that he won't ever get a world title, because they give world titles to anybody nowadays. They give interim world titles to anybody. They give title shots to anybody nowadays. So I feel like Jake Paul, it's not out of the question that he gets a title shot, you know, in the future, because it's just where boxing is right now. They could probably make a pretty penny out of sanctioning a Jake Paul world title bout. So I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Paul does get a title shot and ultimately becomes world champion at cruiserweight, because, like, it's not like that hard to become world champion at cruiserweight. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but if you look at the landscape of cruiserweight, Jake Paul could definitely sneak in a title shot and beat somebody, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that hard to do. And I mean that with a lot of respect. I know it sounds disrespectful, but, like, let's keep it 100. Who do you know in that cruiserweight division that, like, can definitely beat Jake Paul, where, like, there's a chance they don't get robbed? Like, there's gonna be an opponent that they're gonna find for Jake to beat at some point, whenever that time is. I'm not saying Jake's gonna get a title shot anytime soon, but that landscape for the cruiserweight division is just wide open for him to just get some kind of title. And, you know, it's unfortunate as a, you know, genuine boxing fan, but also Jake Paul, you know, he's putting in the work. I don't doubt that, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think real fight fans know what he's doing. You know, we understand that he's, like, trying to fight these names that, like, they're on the brink of boxer and UFC fighter legends and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like, he's timing it perfectly. Like, he's taking cherry picking to a whole nother level. And I can't be mad at it, because, like, people are watching Jake Paul. I don't know who's watching Jake Paul, but some of you guys are watching him. So if that's the case, he's going to continue making money, and I think he is eventually, like I said, he's going to get a title shot because you guys keep watching him. Like, we could say that we hate Jake Paul, he's a clown, but, like, at the end of the day, like, somebody's got to be watching these fights to the point where it's like, all right, we're giving money and revenue to this guy, he's making money and revenue, so it has to, you know, the show must go on. And, you know, that's the case with Jake Paul right now. People are entertained by him. I think it's also those casual fans that continue to watch Jake, and that's why his career is prospering. You know, it's probably all of his YouTube fans that have translated over into the sport of boxing and watch him, and then you got the UFC fans that watch, you know, Nate Diaz, Tyron Woodley, you know, all these guys, Ben Askren, they all fought Jake Paul, you know, and then probably started watching all of his fights from then on. But I think Jake's gonna win. You know, I just think Chavez Jr., he was never a disciplined fighter. You know, I've talked to some of, you know, Chavez Jr.'s, you know, coaches in the past, and they all say the same thing, like, he's off the rails all the time, he's crazy. Like, respectfully, you know, he's an entertaining guy. I hear he's a good guy in general, but he's not really disciplined. He doesn't love boxing the way, you know, a lot of other fighters do. And you have a guy like Jake Paul, who's a big kid, he's a big dude, and at the end of the day, you have a guy like Chavez Jr., who's kind of used to slacking off, he's used to not being disciplined. So it's a perfect fight for Jake Paul to win, honestly, and say, you know, I beat a former world champion. What are you guys gonna say now? He's technically a professional boxer, the son of a legend, and he's gonna play that card, the same thing that he did with Tommy Fury. But real ones know, like, this doesn't really matter. You know, respectfully to Jake Paul, shout out to him, because, like I said, he's become such a big name in the fight game, you know, as of recent, him and his brother. But, you know, real ones know what a real fight is. You know, there's going to be real fights. Zurdo Ramirez is fighting on this card, so that's something to look out for. I don't think Jake Paul stops Chavez Jr. I think he gets out of there with a decision win. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think it moves the needle for him, but it's something that he can add to his resume for sure. He can still say he beat the son of a legend and beat a former world champion. But I think Jake's going to win a decision against Chavez Jr. and then he's going to, you know, continue to ride this hype train of fighting guys that are on the brink of, you know, boxing, and then, you know, also some UFC fighters, any big names out there that Jake could capitalize on. But, you know, those fighters that he's definitely going to beat without a doubt. So let me know in the comments who you guys got, Chavez versus Jake Paul. I think Jake's probably going to win, but it doesn't really matter. But thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next Night Boxing video. Peace.